So this is the engine I'm going to use to build this mud motor. It's a Predator 212cc engine from Harbor Freight. They're 6.5 horsepower. This one is model number 69730. That's the non-Hemi engine. The Hemi model number is 60363. They didn't have any. I picked this one up on sale for the April spring sale for $99.99. It was $60 off. So at that price, I went ahead and got the non-Hemi engine. Well, I just did 3 hours of filming doing a break-in on the motor. I ran it for 10 minutes, drained the oil, and then I filled the oil back up, ran it for 3 hours total, varying the idle speed to about 3/4 throttle about every 15 minutes to get the piston ring package to break in real good. The manual recommends 3-hour break-in period, and I did it with Fram 10W30 small engine oil. So I lost all the footage because I had my camera in slow motion, but one thing I can show you is the burn pattern on the plug. The plug pattern came out beautiful, not too lean and not fouled out, so I'm real happy with that. So here's how the kit came shipped to me. I opted for the 100-inch shaft with a stainless steel upgrade, and this is a box of all the other parts. So I'll open it up and let's see what we got. Well, I give them an A+ in the packing department. They had extra padding anywhere where there's a grease fitting or any kind of threaded area that could have been damaged. So I upgraded to the A100 XS 100-inch shaft with bayou bushings all in it and a stainless steel inner shaft. So I'm going to be mostly in salt water, so I figured I better make at least one upgrade to the kit. The mud motor kit comes packaged excellent in a box. All the parts are really well protected. So I went ahead and cleaned all my hardware and all my shafts and parts with gasoline and then brake cleaner, and I even cleaned out the holes on the block. I test fit everything to make sure that they don't bottom out and they're the correct length. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to go ahead and install this shaft onto the motor. So we take the coupling off. The first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to put never seize on it. Make sure that it doesn't lock up on me eventually. I'm going to never seize the keyway real good. I'm going to install the keyway into the coupler part. Then we'll slide it onto the shaft. You might have to bump it slightly with a dead blow hammer to get it to go home. So you heard it bottom out there. Next thing I'm going to do, I'm going to put a little bit of blue Loctite on the lock, keyway locks. Go ahead and screw them in. So the manual says to go to 5 foot-pounds or 60-inch pounds. So I'm just going to set them real good by hand. I'm going to go ahead and wipe off the excess blue Loctite. Okay, the next part of the build is to go ahead and install the bell housing onto the shaft. And what I did is I cleaned inside both ends of the tubes just to make sure there wasn't any residue in there. I've already test fit it once, so you can see it's going to go right on. Okay, now the manual says to fill the bell housing 1/3 full of grease. So I'm going to use a marine grease to keep water from absorbing and emulsifying in with the grease. I say you don't want to go more than 1/3 full because it can actually overheat the bearing in there. So that's about 1/3 full of grease. We'll go ahead and slide it over the shaft. Might have to tap it a little. Alrighty, so we got it all lined up. I had test fit all these to make sure they didn't bottom out, and then I cleaned them. So I'll put a little bit of Loctite on each one, and I'll get them all started in their respective holes. Looking at the head stamping on these bolts, it looks like there's some good grade 8 hardware. So these take a 13mm wrench. I'll take and run them all in with a 13 millimeter, and I'll crisscross the pattern to bolt it in and bring it all up close evenly. Now that I got them snugged up against the block, I'm just shining a light down there to make sure there's no gap all the way around. So I got a real good tight seal. And what I'll do is I'll torque these to 12 foot-pounds or 144 inch-pounds. So I got my torque wrench set on 144 inch-pounds. And I'll do it in a crisscross pattern until I get them all torqued. Then I'll go over them one more time. It's important that you torque these and that you don't overstress your side cover on your engine. The next thing we're going to do is we're going to install our shaft coupler here. So the instructions say to coat the inside of the threads of this real good with Never Seize. So now we just take our tool supplied with the kit, slide it into the coupler, screw it onto the shaft. It's that simple. Now what happens, see, I can actually turn the motor over with this. What happens is that this is a counterclockwise turning shaft, so it automatically tightens whenever you run the motor. That's all you need to do. So our bell housing installation is all complete. It's greased, the bolts are torqued, we got the coupler end shaft on it, ready to go to the next step of installing the base plate to the engine. Okay, at this point in time, it's time to set the motor into the cradle. So the cradle's got to be like this with the motor setting down in it. And it says to use 2 people at this point with it bolted to the transom, but I'm going to keep doing sub-assemblies inside. So I got the bolts threaded up from the bottom right here, and I'm going to attempt to just take the motor from above and set it right down on the bolts. Sometimes things just go way too easy and it's scary. So once the motor's sitting down on it with the bolts in the bottom, I'm going to go ahead and put a flat washer and a lock washer on each one, and then I'm going to put a generous amount of blue Loctite on them and start my nuts. Kind of a tight space in here. With the weight of the motor setting down on the bench, it keeps the bottom of the bolt from spinning. Got this side finger tight, and I'll do the other side. So for this side, it's a lot tighter than the other one. What I'll do is I'll take a magnetic screwdriver and I'll get the parts in there using that. All right, got all of them started, finger tight. Okay, I got the motor set up on a block of wood, and I'm going to make sure that it's seated back all the way in the back of the frame. By having it on top of a block of wood, I got access to both sides of these bolts, and they're all 13 millimeters. The head size is 13 millimeters, so I'm going to go ahead and tighten them on up and torque them down. I'm going to do a final tightening on these 4 bolts in a crisscross pattern. Alright, now the motor is on the gimbal permanently. So I've spent my whole life running outboards from the left hand side using my left hand, but Swamp Runner recommends using this on the right side of the motor to counteract torque steer. So I'll set it up as they recommended and we'll take it from there. The kit came with a beautiful stainless steel throttle lever. I thought it was going to be a plastic piece. This is a real heavy duty, real nice quality piece. So the first thing we do is we take our inner cable out of the liner housing, and then we thread our housing through this slant hole right here. So in order to install this throttle cable, we're going to take these 2 10 millimeter nuts off. We're going to use needle nose pliers to remove this hose, and pull the airbox off out of the way to where we can get access to the throttle linkage. You need to loosen this tension nut up a little bit to where the throttle can return on its own. You don't want it too tight or too loose. Well, as per the instructions, I'm going to oil this cable down real well with some of the same engine oil I'm using in the motor. Go ahead and thread it back into the sleeve. Nice good level coating of oil everywhere. So once you got your lead piece in here, you line these slits up with the opening. Run your cable through that, and then I'll turn them for now just to keep it from springing back on me. And then I'll pull some of this housing cable back this way. So with that lined up, this end of the cable's going through this clamp, and the very fine end of it goes right through this little hole right here in this adjuster. Okay, for now, until I figure out exactly how to run it, I got the cable run through here, up here, crimped into the stop, and the ends threaded to where they don't hang up on anything. And the one thing you want to do is cycle it through the throttle and make sure that your butterfly opens 100% at full throttle. So I don't know if you can see down in there, you can see 100% open, and it returns all the way back. Now we'll go ahead and reinstall our air box. Okay, our air box is back on. Make sure you got the vent hose rehooked up and secure this vent hose down in its original set. And then go ahead and put on the two 10mm nuts. So once the nuts are back on, go ahead and torque it back down. Operate your choke one time just to make sure, and operate your throttle. So everything looks good. Good to go. Reinstall our little filter pad and our air box top. Alright, the next part to install is the kill switch that's supplied with the kit. And just like everything else up here, I'm not going to tighten this down yet because I don't know where I'm going to end up with all this stuff. And what we'll do is we'll take and we'll run these down the handle and tie wrap them on. So in order to wire up the kill switch, what I did is I opened up this wire clip, and then I'll disconnect the yellow wire and the black wire from the low oil level shutdown. I'll take it off the motor because I won't need it. A lot of people snip this wire off here, but I'm not going to cut it. I'm going to leave it in case I ever do want to hook up the low oil level shutdown. I'll run the wire through the cradle, and I'm going to coat all the wire with wire loom all the way from the kill switch all the way to the back. As you can see, it'll fit right through the holes in the cradle. I'll take and I'll crimp an eye on one end of the kill switch and heat shrink it, and then I'll ground it right here to the engine and to the cradle mounting bolt. And on the other wire, I'll just come up, crimp a male end on it, and hook it right into the kill switch. So either way, you use the kill switch or the on-off switch, it'll put it to ground and it'll kill the motor. So here we are finished. We got this eye grounded to the motor and to the cradle. We got the other wire going to the kill switch, so when it's on, it'll be on, and if we ground this one, it'll kill it, or if we turn it off, it'll ground this one and kill it. So we got them both set up, both ready to go. I still got to purchase the wire loom to coat the wires. Okay, the manual tells you to put a few drops of liquid soap in the handle and slide it on. But if you look online, people have a lot of troubles with the handles coming off. So what I did is, like we used to do with motorcycles and bicycles, put a little bit of gasoline inside of it, shake the excess out and slide it on. The gasoline will actually melt it, make it tacky, and then it won't slip at all. So this is the hole I'm going to use to mount this mud motor on. It's a 1436 South Fork welded aluminum boat. It's seen better days, but I'm going to wash it with Joe Max house cleaner and bleach, pressure wash it, get a good coat of paint on it, and we'll make this thing into a swamp monster. As you can see here, I got the transom mount on the flat boat. what I did is I measured from corner to corner, found the exact center, got it centered up, slid it over the top, clamped it down tight, and then I tightened up the backing nuts with a 13/16 inch wrench to get a good secure fit on the transom. What I've done is I've pushed the shaft a little bit forward in here, and I'm going to grease the contact point up good. The instructions don't say to do this, but I want to make sure it doesn't seize up into the coupling. And just like an outboard, we don't want a lot on the end to where it could possibly hydraulic and not fit in there properly. I'm just going to make sure I got all my splines greased good. We got our sump assembly done here. I'm going to take and grease this piece real good also, where it stabs into the transom bracket. All right, so now I'm going to take and I'm going to turn this down onto about a 90 degree and try to lift the whole assembly up and stab it into the housing. I would recommend 2 people if you have them to do this part. So I'll put a 5-gallon bucket under the handle to make sure that this sits flush like it should, and I'll go ahead and put my washer and nut on the bottom here and tighten it with a 13/16 inch wrench with a hair more torque. Hold back on the bell housing as I tighten it. She swivels real good. Next step is to slide our Carter key in, and I'll bend it to where she can't come out. All right, the next thing I'm going to do is go ahead and give a couple shots of grease in the zert fitting on the transom pivot, and also these 2 fittings here. Make sure everything's greased good from day one. I'm going to go ahead and push the coupling back into the shaft housing, or whatever you want to call it. So I got my 2 wing nuts loosened. I'm going to go ahead and install the shaft now. I'm going to go ahead and tap it forward with a dead blow hammer. I put the prop on temporarily and rotated the shaft to make sure I had good spline alignment. I need to tap it on a little further forward. I didn't think I was 100% in, so what I did is I took the wing nuts out and put a brass wedge in there and tapped it open a hair, and then tapped it with the hammer. Now I know I got 100% contact up into here. So then I lifted up the long tail and sighted down the screws for the bushings and the zert fitting, and made sure that it's lined up with the slit in the bell housing. Now that my shaft's all the way in, I'm going to go ahead and put my wing nuts back in and tighten them down. Give them a little tap with the dead blow hammer. Try to get them both flat. With them both flat, then I know I can keep an eye on them for vibration and if they loosen up. Okay, the last thing we'll do is we'll put the prop on. I'm just going to put a hair of grease on the shaft where it rides. Just to make sure it doesn't get electrolysis and seize on there. So I got my prop on, put the lock washer and the nut on. And the manual says to tighten this to 15 foot-pounds. Once again, it's a 13/16 inch wrench, so make sure I'll have one of those in my toolbox. It fits pretty much everything on the frame mount and the motor. So the instructions say when the shaft's properly seated, there'll be no end play in the shaft, and as you can see, there's none. So once I finished the kill switch, I put the wiring inside of some plastic loom, ran it through the frame. I'm going to fill a barrel up with water to get some water to soak into that end bushing so I don't start it up dry. Only thing left to do is to fire this baby up. switch. Kill switch works. Motor switch works also. Well, the only thing left to do is get out there in the marsh and try this thing out. All in all, I'm real happy with the build. I'm extremely happy with the quality of the kit. The instructions were pretty good. It was a very simple build.